So when I was in school, maybe this was your experience too, I didn't understand why we were reading the stories that we were reading. As far as I knew, it was because the teacher was interested in them. And if the teacher was interested in them, that means that I'm supposed to be interested in them. And that is not the case, or it shouldn't be the case. I hold the teacher responsible, now that I am the teacher, for being the one to give students understanding as to why we're doing what we're doing, whether it be story reading or anything else. That's the first place to start. Because if the student doesn't understand why we're pursuing what we're pursuing, then the entire education is lost. The student's heart isn't in it. And that's where I was when I was in high school. I'm not gonna waste my time casting blame and staying in the past. But here is my renewed understanding of why we study stories. So what's up, y'all? My name is Mr. Crofts. I studied economics and finance in college. After graduating, I left home on a whim to work door-to-door sales in Austin, Texas for nearly a year. Taught myself Spanish, and then when I got back home, I began my career in education, which is the field that I've been in now for the past 2 years. I used to work in a Hillsdale curriculum school. Now I teach online. The question that I want to investigate in this video is why, as a modern day student, should you care about literature? Because I tell you what, I did not. When I was in school, as you might have been able to tell from the frustration of the introduction. I didn't. I barely squeaked by when I was in high school. And without, like I said, without wasting my time casting blame, I attribute my lack of love, my lack of heart being in the subject, in the education that I was receiving, to my teachers. It is the responsibility of the head of the classroom to enable students to understand, to direct students toward understanding why they're there, why they're doing what they're doing. And there should be a good reason, because they're spending a lot of time in those classrooms. So here's the subject for today. The question is literature. Why should we care about it? Why should we study it? First of all, what is literature? When I hear the word literature, this is what I think of. Literature is stories, and particularly great stories from throughout history. Great meaning both that they've had a large impact and that they've had a lasting impact. So examples could include things like Shakespeare, A Tale of Two Cities, Moby Dick, Jane Eyre. These are all books, most of which, frankly, just being 100% transparent, I've not read. And again, it's kind of a unique position that I'm in. I have a heart to want to learn these things, to study these things. But I didn't always. I kind of stumbled across it on my own. And details as to how that happened are perhaps appropriate for another video. But I haven't yet made that happen for one reason or another. And that's part of what I want to do with this channel. Literature is one of several subjects that I want to dive into in the style and spirit of a Hillsdale approach to education, a Hillsdale understanding of what education is. And we'll explain that. We'll go into that a little bit here later. But let me start by in answer to this question, why should we study literature? Why should we care about it? Let me begin by saying something that you already know, which is, as human beings, we all share, not just all of us here in the world today, but all throughout history, we share a handful of very deep, timeless things that are unique to us as human beings, unique to our humanity. Some examples of those things include hopes and dreams, fears, temptations, relationships with other people, and decisions, us being forced to decide how we will be in relationship to those around us. Stories, this is what I imagine stories can do for us and ought to do for us. Why we ought to be reading them and be interested in them. Stories can inform us as to the kinds of choices we ought to make and ought not to make, and as well as to the kinds of questions that we ought to consider, and maybe even the direction in which we ought to consider those questions. Big questions that confront all of us eventually. Questions like, what is man's relationship to God? What if there's no God? What is man's relationship to his fellow man? Not only do we have to confront these questions, we also have to confront decisions as to how we're going to respond with how we live based on our philosophy, our understanding, or our beliefs surrounding those types of questions. So here's the main difference between a typical district-style education that you and I both probably received and a Hillsdale spirited education. I think the difference fundamentally lies in the difference in understanding of what education is, what it ought to be. So here's what I write. A typical district-style school education is most likely utilitarian. That is, school is about getting a job. It's about becoming useful to the workforce. Hence the emphasis on coding at a young age, STEM in the university that I graduated from. Hillsdale, on the other hand, understands virtue to be at the rightful center of a quality education. School is about the formation of good character. Here's another way that I've heard it put. College and career readiness is narrow and low in light of a whole human life. Nobody would say we want to ill-prepare students for a job, but we don't want to restrict what they think of their future as job hunting. That was a quote from, I believe his name is Robert Glasgow. He's principal at Golden View Classical Academy in Golden, Colorado. I heard that quote from Hillsdale's Classical Education podcast, and I thought it was beautiful. Education is not about test scores. Your future is not determined primarily by your ability to get good grades and to perform well on tests. Your future is determined primarily by your character, by who you are. It's your ability to persist. It's your ability to be courageous. Your ability and your commitment to honesty, to be honest. These are the things that matter, and these are the things that we can glean insights into with stories, and with other things too, but with stories in the interest of this video. Let me leave you with an example. I've heard it said that in the book Jane Eyre, which is another one I've not yet read, but would love to, one of the themes that's explored is how do you handle a situation where you offer your friendship or your love to somebody and they don't want it. They don't feel the same way. It's an example of rejected love. And it's very, very much a part of our dealings with other people. We're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but we can't control the decisions of other people, right? So how do you handle that type of situation? The answer might not be clear, and it might not be the same for everybody in every context. But the exploration of that kind of situation and a multitude of others, that's the beauty of the complexity of human relationship. And it's part of the fabric of what makes us that human, makes us human. I look forward to continuing. I look forward to exploring this area with you. Hasta entonces, espero que disfrutes el resto de tu semana. Hasta la próxima, mis estudiantes.